for your comment and your feedback. And really thanks to APSA for giving me this opportunity. Quickly, I would like to address three points. First, the literature, the research speaks to, and then the description of the stage of completion, and finally the next steps. Regarding the literature, the research speaks to, almost everywhere, new forms of security are being tested. For example, we have collaborative security, local security, community security, and these new forms of security are challenging the classic security model. So I try in this research to see in what extent the experiment of safe neighborhood system fits into this dynamic. It is also a question of capturing the experiences of the South from the trajectories of the North, and to come on and of comparing the current reform processes that affect security with Western precedents. Regarding to description of the stage of completion, I have submitted the article to the call of application to the journal Nouvelle Dynamique Africaine NDA for the publication of its fifth issue on, I quote, security policies in Africa from armed robbery to international terrorism, end of quote. And the paper has been accepted. Regarding to the next steps, as I already explained it, I have submitted the article for publication, and the evaluation, proofreading, and correction phase must be validated by 3 different reviewers before the publication of the article. So I am waiting for feedback from the reviewers. I also look forward to your comments and questions. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm going to turn over to Shana for her comments.
Okay, hopefully I'm on now. All right, thank you for a bit of that background, Hadji. I just thank you for circulating this paper on the safe neighborhood system. My first question is actually just to follow up quickly on what you just said. You said you had submitted, sorry, my connection was a little funny. You said you had submitted this already, and if so, if you wouldn't mind sharing the type of journal, because I think that will help me make sure I've framed my comments to be the most useful.
Yes, I have submitted the article to the call of application of the journal Nouvelle Dynamique Africaine, and the paper was accepted. So I am waiting for the correction of the 3 reviewers.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. All right. So as I read this paper, first of all, I want to think about the contribution. You have some wonderful and rich qualitative data here, detailed interviews, which I actually, and I'll mention this later, I think you could highlight more the extent of, the qualitative data that you have available. In addition, as you've also mentioned, this is a paper that really answers important policy questions around, community policing and building complementary non-state security systems to ensure, better lives within urban communities and yet have local oversight. This issue, I think this is a type of learning that goes in all directions, both from Senegal to other countries and from other countries to Senegal, with the experience of community policing and enhancing security and decreasing crime at the very local level. So in terms of some broad questions that I first would have is sort of how this paper fits with the larger project the IDRC project, and in addition with your own other work. I was also wondering if you'll be involved in the upcoming evaluation. I certainly hope you will, because I think you have a lot of insight to share. So as I was reading this with this paper, I felt like you could have laid out the argument more clearly early on in the chapter. Right now, the draft reads somewhat like an inception report for an evaluation study, sort of this is the lay of the land, but I wasn't sure where you wanted to focus your argument. So to bolster that, first of all, you could have a little more theoretical underpinning, sort of existing literature on community policing and police civilian security service relations from Senegal, from Africa, and globally. I would love to see more details on the Senegalese case in the paper. You know, why is it important to study in the context of sort of the Metro Dakar area, you know, and why these particular neighborhoods? And then I would like to see a little more link back to youth, as in the title of the paper. So what their role was within the new Proximate Security Agency, and how do the Proximate Security Agency assistants in the field build relationships with youth. So some of that could include things like the demographic characteristics of the PSA assistants. You know, are they drawn primarily from youth? Are they local notables who build relationships with youth? So sort of who are these individuals and how are they recruited? I would also like just broadly a more detailed description of the Dakar study locations, just a simple table to help clarify why these were selected for the study and whether you're looking for 3 locations that differ across the board in multiple ways, or that are similar in many ways and differ in just one, or if these were just the 3 pilot locations for the study, and if so, how did the PSA choose these locations as a start? So that would really improve the paper, I think. I'd also like to hear more about the origins of the Proximate Security Agency. So where is the political support for this agency coming from? Where did the idea come from? Does it originate with the change in government in 2012? Was it something that was sort of evolving up to that point? And what alternate strategies were considered? In addition, what was the citizen demand surrounding security? And here, I think you can also rely on existing survey data. So you mentioned in passing a couple of existing surveys, but I think you can actually make more use of them in your paper. So you had the delinquency in Senegal mapping study and the Afrobarometer as well. You know, you could use data from these to set the stage. What is the extent of public concern with youth delinquency? What is the extent of public concern with crime, as well as the relative levels of trust in police and gendarmerie in comparison to sort of broad public trust? Now, are these particularly trusted or particularly distrusted institutions within the country? A perhaps more minor point would also be that by having sort of more tables and figures, I think you can better clarify your argument. For example, a nice figure depicting the management structure of the Proximity Security Agency and the Safe Neighborhood System, so that the reader could clearly understand how local governance structures are engaged and who is overseeing the Safe Neighborhood System and the PSA as well. You could also condense some data on case study selection and characteristics of the 3 neighborhoods. And that would, I think, make it easier to follow the flow of the paper. And then finally, I'll leave with 2 sort of additional questions. So how this paper fits in with the larger project on security resilience and, you know, resilience to violence among youth, and then how this fits in with your personal work. And then I was very curious to know if you'd be involved in the upcoming evaluation. I feel like the knowledge you have here is really going to be helpful for that. Oh, and finally, I think you could make a lot more of your qualitative data. So you've learned a lot, you've done all these interviews. It would be helpful if you detailed how you selected respondents for interviews. You know, beyond this, you mentioned there's some snowball sampling, but sort of what were the seed points that began the snowball? Why did you focus on the type of respondents you did? And if there are more sort of citizen voices, it would be wonderful to hear them in the paper. So I think I will wrap up there and not run over to allow for other questions and for Hadji to respond if you'd like to. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to read the paper.
Thank you. Hadji, would you like to respond before we move on to questions?
Yes, I would like to respond to some questions. Yes, thank you, dear Shana, for your comments. I have noted very much things, and I think that it will help me to make better argument for my article. You asked me why I choose Dakar. I focus my study in Dakar, which is the capital of Senegal. In reality, the safe neighborhood system are implemented only in Dakar. There is no the system is not implemented in the other regions. So for actually there is it is only in Dakar where we find this this system. So it was not it wasn't possible for me to go in the other regions. That's why I focus my study in Dakar. For the question of the origin of the concept, in reality, I use in my study the policy transfer theory. I think that the Senegalese government had seen what was done in the other countries like France, and I argue that they had copied what was done in France in the 19th centuries. So the origin of the concept is there, but there is an effort that was made to contextualize in France, for example, they use the term of security of proximity policy, but in Senegal the term is security proximity security. Now there is a small difference, but I argue that it is in reality it is a policy transfer. For the other questions, I think that it is more the comments and orientation for me to make better the paper. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have a couple questions. So we'll start with you, Jenny, and then move on to Layla.
Yeah, okay. Thank you and congratulations you for the nice paper and the innovative idea. I want to come back on what Shana just said about the trust that people have in police. So in the police activity, because mostly when we are talking about safe neighborhood security, it means that people don't really trust in the police. So they try elsewhere to be secure each other. So the neighborhood should be trustworthy, and each other should, how can I say, uh, 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 can guarantee the security of the neighbor. So in our countries, in the sub-Saharan African countries in general, what have been seen is what we call pop vigilantism. I don't know why he didn't really come out or even discuss the vigilantism that is now really, how can I say, it's really active in our community to ensure the security of people and the neighborhood. Because there are many studies in South Africa, for example, which show that sport vigilantism sometimes replace police activity in Pretoria townships. And I was wondering whether he's aware of this in Senegal, and if he can discuss on it in the paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. In my paper, I don't say that the police forces are the police forces are not very, or they don't work very well compared to the assistant, the security assistant. But it is known that Senegalese security forces are very do a very good job. So I don't think that it is for the population to, it is not I don't say that the security assistants are more do a better job than police forces, but I try simply to 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 explore in my research if it is possible to have another system of security where population participate, and what is the consequences if it is more interesting for people to participate, or they should only be spectator. So there is no comparison between the work of the police forces with the security assistant. They don't work they are not in challenging. In contrary, they are collaborating to better make security for people and population.
Yeah, I agree with you, right? I agree with you. But what I was asking myself, because if the police service, if the police activity was really efficient, that everybody is safe, right? Then there will not exist a sort of, how can I say, neighborhood safety queries or issue, right? Because everybody should think that he's safe, and don't think that if he's safe, it means that the neighborhood also is safe, right? But at the time we are asking about neighborhood safety, it means that the police itself is not, how can I say, it's not efficient as possible. So it's not able to guarantee the security of everybody, right? So I was still thinking that maybe also, if you are focused in Dakar, maybe you can also look at the difference between between some quarters of Dakar, between poor, for example, and non-poor, because how poor feel safe is not the same as non-poor are feeling safe, right? And I was also asking myself about the gender. Do you think that women can feel more safe than men? Things like that. So it is important to look at these challenges, even if you say that the police and the activity and what the neighborhood are doing is complementary. I think you also need to justify or to prove, because it's just what you are saying. Is it true that people are really thinking that what the police are doing and what the people are doing are complementary? That's what I'm talking about, pop vigilantism, because vigilantism in South Africa not always collaborate with the police, because people are not trustworthy in what the police are doing, because sometimes they think that police is corrupted, or the time police is taking to act, to alert or to call is very long, and things like that. So they think that pop vigilantism is very good, because it's just a meaning of have to call to alert the neighborhood that you are in trouble, or that people are coming to thief in your house, and all the community, all the neighborhood is struggle to your house to secure you, things like that, right? And people are sometimes not even calling police, because they say that they think that the neighborhood is more efficient to resolve issue that they are facing than the police itself. So it is important, because sometimes even having roads or having sufficient equipment to assist everybody when they are looking for police assistance is not the same. And sometimes also police do not assist the poor at the same way that they're assisting the non-poor. Maybe because how can I say, maybe because reaching out poor households is more difficult than reaching out non-poor households, things like that. So I think it is important to prove or to justify well what you are doing now. Thank you.
Great. Layla, is your hand down now? Or do you still have a question?
I have a couple of questions.
Great, excellent.
Okay. So yeah, Hadji, congratulations on a really interesting paper. I particularly liked how you're advancing a view that shows the new political dispensation in Senegal, which seeks to, include a sort of a citizen state participatory approach in solving the problem of insecurity. So I'm just going to build or just jump onto what Shana had initially said, that what theory are you trying to advance in your paper? Because I think that the data that you've collected and the arguments that you're making are very, very good if you're able to underpin them in some sort of a philosophy or a theoretical approach. And I really think this is where, and you could agree or disagree with me, this is where I feel that you can elaborate more on the social contract theory, yeah? Because it seems like you're already making a good discussion point on the social contract theory itself by looking at the state as the protector of security in a country, and now you're trying to involve the citizens to also try and, promote security. So here you have the state and you have the society on one hand coming together to do the job of the state. So does this mean that you're trying to redefine the social contract? Because the social contract theory is simply, whereby the society cedes to the state their rights, and in turn the state offers them with benefits such as security. So how is this proximity security, you use proximity security assistance governance. How is it envisaged in Senegal's 2012 state administration? Does this provide a platform by which you can argue that it's trying to redefine the social contract? Do you think this would be a good line to pursue in your paper? And, I know you're Senegal, so that's West Africa. It was Francophone Africa. And then in East Africa, we're Anglophone. So our understanding of the social contract, is it similar to the fiscal contract, the social contract in Senegal as well? It would be a fantastic opportunity for you to be able to clarify these nuances in your paper. The other question that I had was, with respect to, I think it's page 7 of your paper. Yes. When you did your interview, did you also interview the youth themselves to assess the effectiveness of the security measures? Because to me, when I read your paper, it seems that your participants were largely drawn from the state. So what of the community representatives, were they people whom you also interviewed? If you look at page 10, I think there's a part in page 10, which is, I think, the second last paragraph. It's not very clear to me. Are you saying that the government pays the agency, or is it the neighborhood council that pays the agency? What do you mean by its contribution to the socket in Lord Healthcare? I'm actually just quoting this from your paper. It's at page 10. I'd like to understand this better. Another question, what is not clear to me is whether these ASP are also drawn from the community. So would you please clarify that? Because if you're getting the state to get the society or the community involved in promoting security, is the ASP the police, or are they individuals from the community who've come in to now patrol the streets? This was not coming out very clear to me. And then you talked about masla. So I understand masla in Arabic, but is it the same meaning that the Senegalese culture have of masla? It would be nice for you to explain this. That's on page 15. Thanks.
Great. So we have a number of people with questions. I don't know if Hadji, you want to quickly respond, or if you would prefer we just take all of the questions that remain.
Yes, thank you for your comments and your interesting question. For the term of masla, effectively, it is taken from the Arabic. It is in all of language, and they take it from Arabic language, and it is the same term, maslaha. For the question of who pay the security assistant, in reality, security assistants are not civil servants. They are just voluntaries, and at the end of the day, they receive a sort of it is not a salary, because they are not civil servant. So they are not civil servant. They are voluntary, and they receive the money from the government. But it is for all assistants. But for the assistant who are sent in the neighborhood, the population contribute to equip them, for example. So they receive. There is an agreement between the agency and the area where there is a safe neighborhood, and the population contribute to the equipment of these security assistants.
Great. So I'm gonna go in the order people raised their little blue hands. So we'll go with Kanele, Christian, and then Tawanda. Kanele, are you there? Yeah, there you go.
Oh, okay, great. I was trying to get unmuted. Thank you. I find it very interesting that that people preferred the private provision of public security over public provision. So I was curious, and I really wanted to understand why this is the case. Why is it that people prefer the private provision over public provision? And I was also wondering what the situation is with other public goods. You know, is it the same with other goods, or is it specifically something that really only relates to security issues? And I also would like to echo what Shana and Laila have said about grounding the work in theory. I thought it would be interesting to maybe also look at, you know, public or private provision of public goods, or public and private regulation governance as some of the reasons you may want to consider in you know, in trying to ground the work in theory. So yeah, thank you.
Great, Christian?
Thank you. It's a very good presentation for sure. And right now, Nigeria, a country like Nigeria is busy trying to start up community policing. So, and that is also something that a lot of countries are thinking about. How do you get the community involved in security? But then again, the idea of the personal, the assistance also raises a lot of concerns regarding that there will be a group of people who are involved in this security, in ensuring security. So maybe one of the things that I didn't hear get properly in the paper is the aspect of the laws and regulations guiding this group, you know, to ensure that they do not, it's a slippery slope. Over the years, you can see this group becoming something else and then becoming, for now, we are like safe neighborhoods, safe. But over the years, people get, there's a fatigue in how the laws are put on how these assistants carry out their responsibilities. And it becomes more or less like community or vigilante system. And the experience in some countries, such as Nigeria, has been horrible. So it's good to unpack that aspect, and it goes into what my colleagues have said earlier on around the theoretical aspect of it and the rationale. And the last question that I have is regarding I see a number of mentions of surveillance. It's a device installed. So I would like to know whether it's, is it a kind of a security CCTV camera installed to provide surveillance, because that also talks about privacy, personal privacies of people, and how do you really ensure that the privacy of people is not put in question. Even if it's not electronic surveillance, human being tracking another human beings, it's also a kind of a contentious issue. So for instance, let's talk about the colleagues in the US who know this so much, also around the Black Lives Movement, that in South Africa as well, that when you go to some certain shops, when you see quote unquote, a white customer who comes into the shop, no one follows him around. The security forces don't follow them around to look at them. But when you see someone who is a Black person, then you see the security person at alert. So how do you justify saying, okay, this person looks suspicious, looks this way, and looks the other way, and then you begin to see a lot of movement and surveillance around those areas? So those are the things that may need to be interrogated in this paper.
Okay, lastly, let's take a question from Tawanda, and then we'll turn it back to Hadji.
Thanks, Hadji. What a well-written paper. And I think what I liked most from your paper is the comparative aspect you are bringing to your argument. When I read the paper initially, I had a number of methodological questions. But I think Shana Warren, she has already addressed some of those things around case selection and the justifications on why some of these cases, 3 cities were selected. But I think what is more also important for me, it is the link between youth precarity and criminal activities, particularly in Senegal. Perhaps if you can unpack that more for the reader to understand what could be the connection between youth precarity and the incidences of criminal activities in some of these cities in Senegal. And another thing was the issue you raised that some of these proximity security assistants were former soldiers, if my reading of your paper is correct. So do you think that maybe their status of being former soldiers is inhibiting or enabling the fight of crime in some of those cities that you did your research on? Basically, that's the question I do have about the status of being former soldiers. Is it theoretically significant or it is not significant? Thank you.
Great. Hadji, do you want to take a moment to respond?
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your all comments. For Tuanda, the connection between the youth precarity and the violence. There are recently a survey, and one of the conclusion of the survey is that yes, it is important, the factor of the economic factor, but the most important thing is not the precarity of youth to explain the criminality. The first factor was, for example, the family, for example, the lack of education, for example, and the survey shows that yes, it is important, the economic factor, but it is not the main reason to explain the of criminality. For the question of Annie, the question of the respect of the human rights, it is the central question, I think, with these new forms of security, like collaborative security, local security, and community security. Because with the classic security model, the security which is done by the government, it is clear there is a legal there is the legal factor are very clear, but with the recent form of security, it is the central question: what about the respect of the human rights? So it is an important question. I don't have the response to this question. It is a very important question. And for the yes, the question of Moketsane. Yes, the security assistant do not enter in the private security. We have the public security with state, police forces, and gendarmerie, and we have also private securities. For example, the agencies created, for example, to for example, I can say that the security assistants are between the public security and the private security. We have element of public security because I said that security assistants are volunteers. They sign an agreement with the agency, the agency, the state agency. But also we have, for example, population who can, for example, make a demand to the agents, to the state agents, to benefit from the safe neighborhood. And in this case, they have the obligation of giving money. So I say that I can say that it is between the public security and the private security. It is not essentially private security because we have many agencies and there are clearly private agencies, but it is not the case of the agency, the state agency, where the security assistant works. For the other question, I think that I don't think that it is question, but more comments and orientation for me.
Great. So I know Natalie has some questions and I have a few comments as well. And then anyone else who has any remaining questions can jump in as well, but I'll turn it to Natalie.
Great. Hadji, thank you for your paper. I learned a lot about this program, which I was not aware of before, and I found it really interesting. There was a lot of, it raised a lot of questions for me that were sort of, I think the others have touched on it, but sort of philosophical in terms of what is the role of the state in providing security for people, and how can this alternative model help or make the provision of security better, but also perhaps help build the state and the strength of state institutions. So I think what I'm gonna say is gonna echo particularly Eugeni's points and Christian's points. Maybe it's the American in me, as Christian noted, but I had some like red flags going off in my head about accountability of these agents of security in terms of it's, you know, you find through talking to people in these communities that they love this new institution. They think that this is really helping provide more security in their neighborhoods. But sort of as Christian mentioned, what is the possibility of something going wrong here? And in particular, like a sort of technical question that might shed light on this more theoretical question is you didn't really make clear, there were a few places where it was hinted at, but I wasn't clear on the strict protocol for how these agents are actually supposed to enforce anti-crime. They don't have the prerogatives of the police. I'm assuming they don't have weapons. That's not made clear. If they do have weapons, that's a whole nother issue. But essentially, if crime arises, what recourse of action do they have? How can they protect themselves? Are they just meant to call the police? I guess I wanted to know a little bit more about their training, but in particular, in what capacity can they infringe on the rights of ordinary citizens in their efforts to protect citizens? And I think that there's like a real tension there. And that relates to the second, and so in general, just what is their training, and then very specifically, what methods of accountability do they face? Are there any formal channels through which the community can lodge complaints about particular officers or things like this? And this relates to my second point, which is that you know, through your interviews, it's quite clear that these communities seem very happy with the work that they're doing. And I, on the one hand, have the methodological question that Shana raised at the beginning. Who exactly were these respondents that you spoke to? Not like what are their names, but how did this snowball sampling work? How did people enter your sample? of, especially in terms of the ordinary citizens living in these communities. So I think your primary evidence comes from 2 quotes, 2 interviews on page 13, 14, but it's not clear who those interviews are with, and again, how representative those people might be of the community or not, and again, how you arrived at interviewing them. So I really want to know if at any point in your time on the ground you received any negative feedback about any of this. Presumably not the entire community is happy. I think the survey that was done said about 80% of respondents said that they trusted the security agents, and that seems great. What was going on with the other 20% who didn't trust them? Is there some other narrative? Because all we get really, at least what I got from the paper, was very positive feedback. And I'm sure that there are people in the community that maybe have some issues or problems. And so that sort of highlights my first question about what are the mechanisms of accountability in case these communities don't continue to be so happy with these agents. The final sort of brief point, and this also I think underlines Shana's comments, is I would love to see you leverage your use of the 3 neighborhoods that you visit. I think it's great that you have these neighborhoods set up, but then there's not a lot of comparing and contrasting going on. I really would like to know if the outcomes in these neighborhoods differed in any way. Were these security assistants more successful in some communities than others? Why would that be? What is it about variation within these communities that can tell us more about this project? And how can we leverage that variation to understand it better? So those are my comments. Again, I echoed a lot of what other people have already said. So I apologize if I'm beating a dead horse here, but again, I enjoyed reading the paper, so thank you.
Great, so I'm going to interject myself here. Most of my comments have been made, but I wanted to think through ways that maybe we can condense this into some clear places you can sort of make changes on the paper, because sometimes it can be overwhelming, especially when a paper has already been accepted, because the end is so close. So the first thing I wanted to suggest is but now you sort of talk about the background to this program, is maybe structuring it really clearly between like the theoretical justification for the program, and then a section that is really explicitly on how the program works, right? So in the first section, you can talk about things like you mentioned when you introduced this, about how this is a challenge to the classic security model, which right now isn't really in the paper, and sort of you could pull in like, why is this program important, right? And then you could, in a sort of second section, talk about sort of the details of this program that would incorporate a lot of the questions you've gotten. The second thing is I would really encourage you, and I think others are as well, to add a methods section. So right now you introduce your 3 neighborhoods in the introduction, but I think if you create a separate section that says sort of like methodology and data, there you can sort of have a concerted discussion of your cases as well as your interview protocol. And I know I'm echoing what others have said, but just maybe to recap at the end. And then I think a discussion on some of these tensions the program builds up would be great at the end. So right now you have some things in your conclusion I don't think you need, like a discussion about how the paper isn't causally identified. I don't think you need that here. I mean, I just don't think it really adds much. And I think you could use that space instead to sort of pull out, some of this questions about people's rights and how that the program raises some of these concerns that people have voiced. I'm actually really glad people brought that up. So last time I was in Senegal, I was doing some work on the Gambian border, which is of course a rural area, but I was staying in a place that the local ASP officers were also staying. And so it was often, at night we would chat and I would ask them, about their work. And they were mostly concerned about smuggling and terrorism. And I was sort of struck in particular that terrorism didn't come up in this paper, and maybe it's not an issue in not how these actors in these neighborhoods see their central objective, but given sort of the Senegalese security apparatus's great concern about terrorism, I was sort of surprised, and I guess it might at least be worth putting in a footnote sort of what that why that isn't the biggest issue in these neighborhoods. But the reason I raise this is because these agents I talked to they were engaging in some really serious profiling about exactly the type of, what a terrorist coming in from the Gambia would look like, right? And how they would stop anyone who dressed a certain way or who had a beard or these types of things. And there is a rights issue there, right? And there's a serious, to Christian's point, like that is profiling. And I think there's something really interesting in that tension and what the state wants to achieve sort of on the cheap by deploying these local agents and the sacrifices that might make for, a democracy. My last point, and then I see that Kenobe has a comment as well, and this is, again, just purely thinking about revisions. I would say that especially on pages like 4 and 5, you have a lot of terminology that's really heavy early in the paper, and I don't think you need it all. So you mentioned things how you're pulling on this advocacy coalition framework, or how you're distinguishing between primary and secondary resilience. And I understand that might be influential in how you've studied this in the past, but you don't always use those frameworks throughout the paper. You don't really come back to a lot of those terms. And so if you don't really use them, I don't think you need them here, right? Or you might want to pick 1 or 2 and then keep those and then pull them out throughout the paper. But right now I think it's sort of taking up space and it doesn't seem to be helping directly in your analysis. So I think you can cut some of that, even if it is sort of important in the broader literature. If you don't use it here, I don't think you need it here. So I'll turn it over to Kenobe as a last question.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a quick follow-up, and thank you for that clarification that it's not a case of private versus public. But I was looking at the paper, and I noticed that you indicate that according to the Afrobarometer study, only 19% of the citizens say that the police inspire confidence. And this is against about 81%, even though it was a different study, this against 81% who feel that proximity security inspires confidence. So I really wanted to understand what could have influenced this huge disparity in terms of what inspires confidence between the police and the proximity security. Thank you. I think probably that's a clearer way of asking my question.
Great. All right. Do you want to respond in the last few minutes, Hadji?
Yes, quickly, and thank you for all your comments. I would like to precise that my approach was not a public policy evaluation, but public policy analysis. That's why in my research I have not, for example, make interviewers with population, but I have interviewers only with, for example, the public responsible, in order to understand how the safe neighbor system is implemented and works. But it wasn't for me. It was not in my approach to evaluate the system. So that's why I in my research I have not, for example, made interviews with population in order to know how they think, or they think about the system. The other question is the main critic toward the system, or toward the Senegalese government, is to say that instead of recruiting civil servants in the police forces, they choose they had chosen this approach to make agreement, or to engage volunteers, and it it is one of my point of view is that state are facing difficulties in economics or in budgeting, and instead of recruiting civil servant, they prefer to have this type of agreement with population instead of that is the main critique toward the system. And at the beginning, many people said that it is simply a means. People had this point of view, but I think that in reality, the government or the state, many state, for example, Senegalese state, don't have the possibility to recruit civil servant, and they prefer this option.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone for a really productive discussion on our second day of our paper presentations. We will see you all next Tuesday. I should thank quickly as well, of course, Shana Warren for generously providing comments, as well as Professor Name, who's no longer with us, who provided comments for Layla this morning. But we will see you all on Tuesday. As a reminder, I believe on Tuesday we're going to start an hour early and have some a short discussion about professionalization, and you can ask questions. If you have things in particular you would like us to cover, please feel free to email us and we can sort of prepare some comments. But this is a time to talk about how to choose journals for your articles, or how to sort of develop a network, things like this that sort of I think all young scholars, myself included, right, have to sort of work through and think about as sort of we begin our careers. But it's meant to be useful for you, so if you have particular concerns or things you'd like to discuss, please let us know. We'll send an email reminder about that. But if not, I hope you all have a nice rest of your week, and we will see you next Tuesday. Oh, Natalie, yeah.
Just one very quick reminder that if you haven't yet recorded your short introduction, 30 to 60 second introduction that we're going to show at the APCG business meeting, make sure that you get that in over the weekend.
Great, thank you.
See you guys next week.